Before Netflix dropped series and platforms fought for your eyeballs, America gathered around 3 networks every night, and sometimes those networks swung for the fences. The 1970s birthed the miniseries, not just TV, but cultural events that stopped traffic, crashed phone systems, and made water pressure drop citywide during commercial breaks. These weren't your grandmother's soap operas. Number 13. QB 7-1974 premise. A physician sues a novelist for publishing statements implicating the doctor in Nazi war crimes. NBC cranked out this 6.5-hour courtroom thriller over 3 nights in April 1974, starring Ben Gazzara and Anthony Hopkins, back when Hopkins was still hungry and Gazzara could smoke on screen without triggering health warnings. The miniseries, as it came to be, got its start in 1974 with this adaptation of Leon Uris's doorstop novel about Holocaust denial, before anyone called it that. ABC spared no hyperbole, claiming it was the most ambitious single project that had ever aired. Network suits discovered something magical. Audiences would sit still for 6 hours if you gave them Anthony Hopkins cross-examining Nazis. Both series got huge ratings and interested other networks in the format. The production budget hit astronomical territory for 1974 television. Think small movie money stretched across 3 nights of primetime real estate. That opening scene with James Mason's silky narration over bombed-out European landscapes? Pure television gold that established the miniseries template. Big stars, bigger themes, and production values that made regular TV look like community theater. QB7 proved American audiences were starving for something weightier than Laverne and Shirley. Number 12. The Money Changers, 1976. Premise: power struggle erupts when a dying bank president forces 2 vice presidents to compete for succession. The 6.5-hour NBC miniseries aired as 4 parts on December 4, 1976, and each of the subsequent 3 Sunday evenings through December 19th as part of the network's big event format. Kirk Douglas and Christopher Plummer duked it out as ruthless banking executives in Arthur Haley's corporate thriller, back when banks were still boring enough to seem respectable. Producer Ross Hunter threw serious money at this adaptation, understanding that viewers would tune in for primetime Shakespeare if you dressed it up as Wall Street intrigue. The cast read like a who's who of 1970s television royalty. Joan Collins as the scheming mistress, Jean Peters making her comeback after years of Howard Hughes-imposed exile, and Helen Hayes as a psychiatrist, because even bankers needed therapy in the Carter era. The most electrifying scene? Christopher Plummer received a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a limited series in 1977 for his performance as the Machiavellian Roscoe Hayward, particularly his chilling boardroom manipulations. John J. O'Connor of the New York Times raised concerns about the violence portrayed in the miniseries. He described the scene that concluded Part 1 involving the rape of embezzler Miles Easton by fellow inmates as one of the most explicit sexual assault scenes devised without benefit of outright hardcore pornography. Production costs soared past $3 million, massive for network television that still operated on shoestring budgets. The series introduced automated teller machines based on real technology that was issued a patent in 1974 in the United States, making it accidentally prophetic about how banks would eventually eliminate human contact entirely. Number 11. 7th Avenue, 1977. Premise: poor Lower East Side kid claws his way up the garment industry food chain through the mid-20th century. 7th Avenue was broadcast on NBC from February 10th to February 24th, 1977, as 6 episodes in 3 two-hour blocks, as part of NBC's weekly miniseries series, Bestsellers. Stephen Keats starred as the ambitious schmata merchant, surrounded by Jane Seymour, Anne Archer, and enough character actors to populate a small Eastern European village. Norman Bogner's 1967 novel provided the source material for this rags-to-riches epic set in Manhattan's Fashion District. The production suffered from miniseries curse number 1, Invisible Home Video Existence. Unlike the other bestsellers miniseries, Captains and the Kings and Once an Eagle, both of which I've already reviewed, as well as the upcoming The Rhineman Exchange, which all have been around forever on VHS and DVD and even streaming, 7th Avenue has been totally MIA on the home video front. This scheduling snafu condemned the series to bootleg obscurity, making it perhaps the most genuinely missed entry on our list. The cast was terrific, including Stephen Keats, Dory Brenner, Jane Seymour, I'm Schwitzing Here, Ann Archer, Christopher Tobori, Herschel Bernardi, Richard Dimitri, Jack Gilford, Mike Kellen, Alan King, Ray Milland, Paul Sorvino, Eli Wallach, William Wyndham, John Plachette, Bro Peters, Ann Berger, Josh Mostel, Richard Klein, and inexplicably, Gloria Graham, reading like a phone book of reliable television workhorses. Budget-wise, NBC allocated roughly $2.5 million across 6 hours, modest even by 1977 standards. The fashion industry setting provided built-in visual appeal without requiring expensive location shoots or elaborate special effects. What killed it commercially was timing, airing during the same season as Roots, which vacuumed up all available attention for event television. Number 10. Eleanor Anne Franklin, 1976. Premise: the Roosevelt marriage from courtship through FDR's election, told from Eleanor's perspective. Eleanor and Franklin is a 1976 American television miniseries starring Edward Herrmann as Franklin D. Roosevelt FDR and Jane Alexander as Eleanor Roosevelt, which was broadcast on ABC on January 11th and 12th, 1976. This biographical powerhouse arrived during America's bicentennial year, when the country was desperate for heroes who didn't involve body counts or Watergate hearings. The production team adapted Joseph P. Lash's Pulitzer Prize-winning biography, giving viewers the ultimate power couple origin story decades before anyone cared about political dynasties. Based on Joseph P. Lash's majestic dual biography, Eleanor and Franklin is a deeply moving portrayal of America's longest-serving first couple. Edward Herrmann and Jane Alexander delivered powerhouse performances that made viewers forget these were actors pretending to be historical figures. Winner of a Golden Globe and 11 Emmy Awards, the miniseries succeeded by focusing on the private relationship behind the public facade. The most devastating scene involved FDR's affair with Eleanor's secretary, handled with unusual psychological sophistication for network television. The scenes depicting how the couple decided to stay together are highly poignant, as are the scenes showing Franklin falling ill with polio and at first giving way to depression, then with Eleanor's support becoming determined to continue his political career. ABC spent approximately $4 million on the 2-part, 4-hour production, serious money that reflected the network's confidence in prestige programming. The investment paid off with massive ratings and critical acclaim that established the template for biographical miniseries throughout the decade. Number 9. Studs Lonergan, 1979. Premise: Irish-American Chicago youth navigates Depression-era despair and spiritual emptiness across 3 decades. In 1979, Studs Lonergan was produced as a television miniseries starring Harry Hamlin, Colleen Dewhurst, Brad Dourif, Dan Shore, and Charles Durning. James T. Farrell's brutal trilogy about working-class disillusionment got the NBC treatment, transforming literary naturalism into compelling television drama. The trilogy was adapted into a minor 1960 film and a 1979 television miniseries, both of which were simply titled Studs Lonergan. Farrell wrote these 3 novels at a time of national despair. During the Great Depression, many of America's most gifted writers and artists aspired to create a single, powerful work of art that would fully expose the evils of capitalism and lead to a political and economic overhaul of the American system. The miniseries arrived at the perfect moment. 1979's economic stagflation made Depression-era stories feel uncomfortably contemporary. Harry Hamlin, fresh from making Hearts Flutter, delivered a career-defining performance as the doomed protagonist. The miniseries preserves the novel's tragic ending, but humanizes Studs Lonergan's family and friends to a very considerable degree. Colleen Dewhurst and Charles Durning provided heavyweight dramatic support, elevating what could have been another Misery Loves Company slog into genuine character study. Production designer Jan Scott won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Art Direction for a limited series or a special. The period recreation cost NBC roughly $3.5 million, with extensive Chicago location shooting that captured the grimy authenticity of Farrell's source material. Despite critical acclaim, the series struggled in ratings against lighter competition, proving that audiences preferred their social commentary with more hope and fewer dead ends. Number 8. King Dash, 1978. Premise: Martin Luther King Jr.'s journey from Baptist minister to civil rights icon, ending with his 1968 assassination. King is a 1978 American television miniseries written and directed by Abby Mann, based on the life of Martin Luther King Jr., the American civil rights leader. It aired for 3 consecutive nights on NBC from February 12th through 14th, 1978. Paul Winfield embodied the civil rights leader with startling authenticity, supported by Cicely Tyson as Coretta Scott King and Ossie Davis as King Sr. The production faced immediate controversy and resistance. Though heavily promoted, the series met with controversy and was a huge ratings disappointment. The first installment was the lowest rated of all. 64 primetime programs for the week of its debut. American audiences in 1978, only 10 years after King's assassination, apparently weren't ready for network television's version of their recent traumatic history. Several real-life figures from the civil rights movement had minor roles in the production, including then-Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson, King's sister Christine King Ferris, his niece Alveda King, and his 4 children, Yolanda, Martin III, Dexter, and Bernice. Donzalee Abernathy, Tony Bennett, Julian Bond, and Ramsey Clark each portrayed themselves. This documentary-style authenticity added emotional weight that made the series feel more like historical testimony than entertainment. NBC invested $6 million in the 6-hour production, understanding the cultural importance despite predicted ratings challenges. The miniseries earned 9 Emmy Award nominations, including nominations for actors Paul Winfield, Cicely Tyson, and Ossie Davis. The series succeeded artistically while failing commercially, a pattern that would define many of the decade's most important television events. Number 7. Once an Eagle, 1976. Premise: 2 Army officers' parallel careers from World War I through World War II, 1 honorable soldier, 1 scheming politician in uniform. Once an Eagle is a 1976 9-hour American television miniseries directed by Richard Michaels and E.W. Swackamer. The picture was written by Peter S. Fisher and based on the 1968 Anton Myrer novel of the same name. Sam Elliott and Cliff Potts played the contrasting military men in this sweeping epic that aired as part of NBC's Bestsellers anthology. The miniseries concerns the 30-year careers of 2 military men from the outbreak of World War I to the aftermath of World War II. Sam Damon, Sam Elliott, is a virile and praiseworthy warrior. Courtney Massengale, Cliff Potts, is the opposite, an impotent, self-aggrandizing conniver. The series launched Elliott's leading man career while delivering sophisticated commentary on military leadership and moral courage. Anton Myrer's book, on which the series is based, is a military novel written in the United States. The novel is noted for its stark descriptions of men in combat and in its analysis of human and technical challenges and the moral dilemmas of command. It is one of only 2 novels on the U.S. Army's recommended reading list for officer professional development, making this miniseries accidental military recruitment material. The production budget reached $5 million for 9 hours, with some of the scenes of the film were filmed in Napa Valley, California. The series featured an ensemble cast including Glenn Ford, Amy Irving, Melanie Griffith, and Ralph Bellamy. What makes Once an Eagle tragically influential is its subsequent invisibility. For some inexplicable reason, nobody has managed to release it commercially for a quarter century, creating a cult following based entirely on bootleg VHS recordings and nostalgic memory. 6. Little Women, 1978. Premise: the March sisters navigate Civil War era, New England family life, and romantic complications. Little Women, with Meredith Baxter, Susan Day, Ann Dusenberry, Eve Plum. 4 sisters come of age in Massachusetts during the American Civil War as their father is away serving. NBC's 3-part adaptation brought Louisa May Alcott's beloved novel to primetime with a cast of television royalty: Meredith Baxter, fresh from Family; Susan Day, The Partridge Family; and Eve Plum, The Brady Bunch. The miniseries succeeded by treating familiar material with unexpected sophistication. Rather than simply recycling the 1933 and 1949 film versions, the production explored the March family's financial struggles and social constraints with adult understanding. The series captured both the cozy domesticity and underlying social tensions that made Alcott's novel endure. What distinguished this adaptation was its casting of established television personalities in period roles, creating cognitive dissonance that somehow worked. Viewers watched Marcia Brady and Laurie Partridge navigate 1860s Massachusetts, bringing contemporary relevance to historical material. The approach influenced countless subsequent period adaptations that prioritized emotional authenticity over historical accuracy. NBC allocated $3.5 million for the production, filmed primarily on East Coast locations that provided authentic New England atmosphere. The series aired in October 1978, perfectly positioned for fall family viewing. While critics dismissed it as television comfort food, audiences embraced the emotional warmth during a decade defined by political cynicism and economic uncertainty. 5. Washington, Behind Closed Doors, 1977. Premise: ruthless U.S. president and his inner circle scheme to maintain power through corruption and cover-ups. Washington. Behind Closed Doors is a 1977 American television miniseries produced by Paramount Television that was broadcast in 6 parts airing. Across 6 consecutive nights on ABC from September 6th to September 11th, 1977. Based on John Ehrlichman's Roman a Clef about the Nixon administration, the series featured Cliff Robertson, Jason Robards, and Robert Vaughn as thinly disguised Watergate figures. The timing was perfect. 3 years after Nixon's resignation, American audiences were ready for dramatized versions of recent political trauma. The story of a power-hungry U.S. president and the men with whom he surrounds himself in order to keep his hold on power. The series offered therapeutic revenge fantasy, watching fictional politicians face consequences that real-life figures had avoided. What made Washington dangerous was its insider accuracy. Ehrlichman had been there in the room where it happened, and his fictional account contained enough recognizable details to make viewers squirm. The series depicted presidential corruption with documentary-style authenticity that regular television drama couldn't match. ABC invested $8 million in the 6-night event, understanding they were purchasing cultural catharsis as much as entertainment. The production featured meticulous recreation of White House interiors and Washington power lunch establishments. Critics praised the series for treating political corruption as systemic rather than individual moral failure, a sophisticated perspective that elevated it above simple scandal mongering. 4. Centennial, 1978 to 1979. Premise: epic chronicle of Colorado Territory from 1795 to 1970s, following multiple generations through westward expansion. Centennial is a 12-episode American television miniseries that aired on NBC from October 1978 to February 1979, and again from September 1980 to October 1980. The miniseries follows the fictional history of Centennial, Colorado from 1795 to the 1970s. James A. Michener's 1,000-page novel became television's most ambitious historical epic, with a runtime of 26 hours and a $25 million budget. It was one of the longest miniseries ever and the most expensive television show in history. The production employed armies of talent. It employed 4 directors and 5 cinematographers and featured over 100 speaking parts. The cast included Richard Chamberlain as a Scottish fur trapper with very unruly hair, Robert Conrad, Raymond Burr, and dozens of other familiar faces rotating through 2 centuries of American expansion. The bizarrely inappropriate casting, like Robert Conrad as a Quebecois fur trapper and Richard Chamberlain as a Scotsman, became part of the series' eccentric charm. What separated Centennial from other historical epics was its scope, not just individual stories, but the entire process of American civilization spreading westward. The series tackled Native American displacement, environmental destruction, and economic exploitation with unusual frankness for network television. Each episode cost over $2 million, unprecedented for the late 1970s. The portrayal of the Native American people was very well done, according to contemporary reviewers, representing sophisticated historical perspective rarely seen in popular entertainment. The series influenced every subsequent multi-generational television epic, establishing the template for shows from North and South to more recent streaming series. Number 3. Salem's Lot, 1979. Premise: writer returns to his hometown to discover the residents are being transformed into vampires by ancient evil. Salem's Lot, also known as Salem's Lot, the movie, Salem's Lot, the miniseries, and Bloodthirst, is a 1979 American 2-part vampire miniseries based on the 1975 horror novel Salem's Lot by Stephen King. Directed by Tobe Hooper and starring David Soul and James Mason, this adaptation elevated Stephen King from cult horror writer to mainstream television star. The production faced unique challenges adapting King's 400-page novel for network television. After Warner Brothers acquired the rights to Salem's Lot, the studio sought to turn the 400-plus page novel by Stephen King into a feature film, while still remaining faithful to the source material. Producer Sterling Silliphant, screenwriter Robert Getchell, and writer-director Larry Cohen all contributed screenplays, but none proved satisfactory. Tobe Hooper, fresh from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, brought serious horror credibility to network television. With a budget of $4 million, principal photography began on July 10, 1979, in the Northern California town of Ferndale, with some scenes filmed at studios in Burbank, California. The production spent $100,000 building the iconic Marston House facade, serious money for what was essentially elaborate set decoration. The floating vampire boy at the bedroom window became television's most memorable horror image of the decade. Salem's Lot had a significant impact on the vampire genre as it inspired horror films such as Fright Night, 1985, and the scenes of vampire boys floating outside windows were referenced in The Lost Boys. 1987, and later spoofed in The Simpsons episode Treehouse of Horror 4. The series proved that network television could deliver genuine scares without theatrical gore, influencing decades of television horror. Number 2. Holocaust, 1978. Premise: 2 families, one Jewish, one German, experience the rise of Nazi Germany through personal tragedy and moral compromise. Holocaust, full title, Holocaust, The Story of the Family Weiss, 1978, is an American television miniseries which aired on NBC over 5 nights, from April 16th to 20th, 1978. Starring Meryl Streep, James Woods, and Michael Moriarty, this 4-part epic brought the Holocaust to American living rooms with unprecedented emotional impact. Holocaust was watched by an estimated 120 million viewers in the United States when it was first broadcast in 1978. The series achieved something unprecedented, making abstract historical tragedy personally immediate through fictional family drama. It dramatizes the Holocaust from the perspective of the Weiss family. Fictional Berlin Jews, Dr. Joseph Weiss, Fritz Weaver, his wife Berta, Rosemary Harris, and their 3 children, Carl, James Woods, an artist married to Inga, Meryl Streep, a Christian woman. The international impact proved even more extraordinary than American success. In fact, the 4-part series starring a young Meryl Streep and James Woods, first shown in the United States in 1978, burned itself into the consciences of many Germans at the time, helping bring about a shift in the country's approach to its history. The German broadcast became a cultural watershed moment. Der Spiegel admired this trivial American series, saying it had managed to do what hundreds of books, plays, films, and TV broadcasts, thousands of documents, and all concentration camp trials in 3 decades of post-war history had failed to do: to inform Germans about the crimes committed against the Jews in their name in such a way that millions were shaken. NBC spent $12 million on the production, enormous by 1978 standards. Holocaust won Emmy Awards for Outstanding Limited Series, as well as acting awards for Meryl Streep, Moriarty, and Blanche Baker. The series proved that television could tackle the most difficult historical subjects while maintaining artistic integrity and commercial appeal. Number 1. Rich Man, Poor Man, 1976. Premise: 2 working-class brothers pursue opposite paths through post-Bonaparte America, one achieving wealth and respectability, the other embracing rebellion and violence. Rich Man, Poor Man is a 1976 American television miniseries based on the 1969 novel of the same name by Irwin Shaw that aired on ABC in 1- or 2-hour episodes, mostly on Monday nights over 7 weeks, beginning February 1st. Peter Strauss, Nick Nolte, and Susan Blakely starred in this adaptation that was the 2nd time programming of this nature had been attempted. The first TV miniseries, QB7, had aired, also on ABC, in 1974. Rich Man, Poor Man achieved what no television program had accomplished before. 45 years of changing societal attitudes and tastes, as well as the anything-goes sexual nature of today's media environment, has eliminated almost all of the power to shock that Rich Man, Poor Man did so well back during the bicentennial. The series featured unprecedented sexual content, moral ambiguity, and social criticism wrapped in primetime family drama. There's no question, though, that Rich Man, Poor Man's debut on February 1st, 1976, started the ball rolling for the golden age of the miniseries, roughly the late 70s, through the late 80s. Creating a template of sorts for many future productions, best-selling source novel, lots of star cameos, and supporting turns, plenty of sex and action. The series proved that American audiences would embrace sophisticated, adult-oriented television if networks had the courage to provide it. With just 12 episodes in February and March of 1976, Rich Man, Poor Man still managed to come in as the 2nd most watched show in the country for the entire 1975 to 1976 season, right behind ratings Godzilla, All in the Family. Universal Television invested approximately $6 million in the production, massive money that reflected the industry's new confidence in event television. The series spawned an immediate sequel and influenced every subsequent Family Saga miniseries. At the time, Rich Man, Poor Man was the absolute cutting edge of technology, if you will, in presenting televised drama, and its appearance created a tsunami in the Nielsen's that's difficult to comprehend in today's TV world. It established the economic model and creative template that defined television's most ambitious decade. These 13 miniseries proved that television could be literature, cinema, and cultural phenomenon simultaneously. They transformed prime time from a wasteland into a battlefield for America's soul, tackling subjects that movies couldn't touch and books couldn't visualize. Which of these buried treasures deserves the streaming resurrection treatment? Did we overlook your personal obsession from the Carter administration? And here's the real question that'll keep you awake tonight. If these shows could capture 120 million viewers with just 3 networks, what cultural earthquakes are we missing in today's infinite choice hellscape? The 1970s figured out appointment television. But did we accidentally kill event television when we gave everyone their own remote control?